So, what is the state of the Chinese movie industry from IMAX's perspective? I know you're at the higher end right now, and but more percentage of the big blockbusters are going into IMAX, and Chinese seem to be buying them, at least through January through May. What does January through May, how does that translate to projections for the rest of the year?
So we're having a great year. Obviously, it started out with a very strong Chinese New Year. We're seeing high, big tentpole films coming in, both from Hollywood as well as the Chinese local language slate. So, I think we're on our way to one of our best first halves. We've got titles coming in, getting dated, almost day and date with the rest of their global releases. Mission Impossible 8, Jurassic World, How to Train Your Dragon, further out, Zootopia 2, and then finally, this tiny little movie called Avatar 3 at the end of the year. So lots coming in on the Hollywood front.
Now, wait a minute. I thought the Chinese economy was slowing and the consumers are more discerning, and I thought there was a trade war that was going to be impacting the number of U.S. films coming into China.
Yeah, business is really as usual. It's pretty great to see. The process of importation is really been very smooth. These films are getting dated with regularity, and there's really nothing very much changed that we've seen over the past few months, and we expect that to continue. So I hear about this trade war, but we haven't exactly felt it directly hit our business.
Why is that? There was a lot of noise, obviously, with the tariffs and Donald Trump's proclamation about bringing films back to the United States and tariffing foreign films that come into the United States. But is that all a bunch of nothing? I know Richard, your boss, has talked about it's just a bunch of noise, but it hasn't been impacting you?
I got to agree with my boss, right? It started out, with a couple of bloggers that basically started some online rumors, and there was about a week of frenzy around it, and then 7 days later, it was very clear that business was back to usual. So I think there's always been a lot of noise, and there will always continue to be some noise. But for our little sector, we're pretty protected from a lot of the outside noise.
So what's going on with Wanda? Because I believe they operate, about 50% in China of your IMAX screens, and they're going to be converting more of them to the higher end. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was an announcement we made earlier this week, something we're really proud of. I think in particular with that announcement, it's not about new sites, but it's really about converting other premium formats. So that, I think, is just further confirmation of the demand for IMAX in the market, replacing other premium formats with IMAX. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into considering that, and certainly on Wanda's ROI and looking at the financials of what IMAX means to them, and the brand, and what consumers are really looking for right now. We saw, I think it was Lighthouse Research did a survey, and 82% of the Chinese population now prefers large premium formats. Obviously, IMAX is leading that. But this strong preference for premium is not going away. In fact, I think it's only getting stronger.
The premium quality, but there's a premium price according to that as well. And also filming, I believe, in your most advanced cameras and production equipment is more expensive. Beijing and Light and others have talked at the Shanghai Film Festival about maybe there's too many films being made right now for mass market. It could be about half of that, because costs over the last decade have more than doubled, or tenfold, I believe is the term that it was the figure they used.
I saw that earlier this week. What is the correct number of films to be making any given year, I think is anyone's guess, right? I'm not sure exactly which types of films they were referring to. For us, I don't really see that being a factor that influences our business. We're in the business of doing the biggest blockbusters, whether they're Chinese language or Hollywood. And for those films, I don't think we're going to see a shortage in sort of investment for that. Our cameras, if anything, I think they add to box office, and that's why so many filmmakers and studios want to be using our cameras. Yesterday we announced 3 new titles, Chinese language titles, Dongji Rescue, the Cool Fish 2, and then Writer's Odyssey 2, all of which are going to be releasing this summer and before the end of the new year.
So what did Ne Zha 2 basically do to the industry? Because that was really the tentpole for the box office success of late, and there is some concern that after that runs its course, that maybe the demand will taper off.
You know, for me, I think Ne Zha 2 proved one simple thing: the audience is there. If you make a good movie, the audience is there, and they showed up in huge numbers. We, year to date, a lot of help from Ne Zha 2, have seen 22 million in attendance for IMAX.
Right.
That's a very large number, and so I think, you know,
it was double year over year, wasn't it?
It was double year over year. That's great. You got your numbers there. So I think it proves that the theater-going audience in China is really strong. It's really about the content supply.
But how resilient is it? I mean, the economy is not doing as well as authorities would like, no doubt. And people are holding on to their discretionary money, their household savings.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that going to watch a movie is still a really high ROI for people. You know, you're paying less than $10 to be entertained for 2 to 2.5 hours. In the summertime, it's air conditioned. You know, you've got popcorn, you've got Cokes. I mean, in terms of time and money, I think it's still a really high value proposition. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're still seeing a lot of growth in our market share. Again, year to date, we're doing 5% of the total box office in China. That's the highest we've ever done in any year. And I think people, again, it goes back to wanting that premium experience for what is, I believe, a really reasonable cost.
What would be the target then, from 5% to what over the next 5 to 10 years? Of course.
From 5 to 100.
You're taking that to Richard and saying that's our business plan for the next 5 years?
You know, no, we don't give ourselves sort of a target number.
Yeah.
I mean, we have less than 1% of the total screens in China. We've got about 800 screens in China. So, you know, doing 5 times that in box office is something we're really proud of. But always, I think there's room to grow. And we're going to be pushing the limits into double digits.